Thank you. We're not going to do the breakout room since we have a small group. So I'm going to share. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So welcome to our very first AP hours and AP office hours. I apologize for that. Our first session is called Calendaring for Success, and I'm Dr. El-Amin. I am one of the CTMs in the fantastic North Division leading out. And welcome again. All right. So the purpose of us creating AP office hours is to help develop highly effective instructional leaders who can support the work of the principal, to increase our leadership capacity as Tier 2 leaders in the North. We are also going to be creating a digital library of resources that Tier 2 leaders can use as we upload artifacts. For instance, today we're going to be talking about calendaring. So we're going to invite you guys to share your version of your calendar so others can see and they can use little pieces of what you share to improve theirs. And then, of course, my favorite part is creating a community amongst our Tier 2 leaders so that you can collaborate and support each other in the collective work that we do. Here is what we've planned for the rest of the year. So today on the 30th, we're doing Calendaring for Success. And then every other Tuesday afternoon, we'll have different sessions. We have 4 different buckets of categories: time management, which is what we're starting with today, instructional leadership, managing personnel, and operations. And so we've created a Teams channel, and this calendar here is there in the Teams channel. And so definitely when we're done with our session today, you can visit the Teams channel and see the things that have been set there. Here is our agenda for today. And so we have a 45-minute session plus a 15 minutes of lab time for you to stay back and actually work on your calendar, because we know that the further we get away from the session and we get inundated with all of the things that we're doing, you may not have time to do it. So we've built 15 minutes in to our agenda today to do so. And so we'll start with a warm welcome and we'll have an opportunity to connect. Our wonderful presenters will each have an opportunity to share their process of creating their calendar. We'll have a Q&A and then our closing activity. So our session norms for today: be fully present for your learning today, be open to different perspectives, take up all of your space. And what that means is be authentically you, ask all of your questions, share your experiences, because we learn from each other. And as always, as professionals, take care of your personal needs. So for our warm welcome, here is a great quote by Stephen Covey. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So on a response card, on a piece of paper, or whatever you have in front of you, I want you to write down, how do you determine your next week's priorities? Like, what's the process that you go through to figure out what are your biggest priorities for the next week? All right, I'm sure everybody's had a chance to think about how they set their priorities. And right here is where we would have broken out had we had a larger group. But I'm just going to invite someone to come off mute and share who you are, the campus where you serve, and how do you set your priorities for the week.
Good afternoon. This is Miss Garza. I'm with Kennedy Elementary. And the way I prioritize my task or assignments is by looking on my agenda and to see what is coming up. But mainly, the main focus is instruction. Obviously, I am the CTC, so I'm in charge of testing. And next week is going to be the STAR standalone. So that's one of my priorities right now. And then TalkPass is coming up. But instruction definitely is first. So Monday, I know is going to be a very busy day for the STAR standalone. So as of next week, that's the priority for Monday. And if I have time, I will be going in and out classrooms to see, my teachers.
Thank you for sharing, Ms. Garza. We appreciate that, and it's very nice to meet you. Someone else to share how you set your priorities?
Hi, this is Mr. Rodriguez. So like Ms. Garza, I'm also CTC. So the first thing that we do in our campus every Monday, we have a leadership meeting, and we bring our schedule for the week, just so that we know what we're doing, keep us accountable. Usually focus on my spot observations, my 6 spot observations first. And then as a CTC, I look at the testing calendar and then prioritize what's coming first. Like right now, I did my spot observations, the Monday and Tuesday, so that I can focus on the standalone STAR exam and then focus on TELPAS. Whenever I don't have TELPAS or any testing, what I do after doing my spot observations, I'm usually in the classroom. So in the calendar that I have, the schedule that I have, I put who am I gonna see, who am I gonna support, and it's based on who needs it more.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ms. Rodriguez. Thank you for sharing. Someone else would like to share, how do you set your priorities?
I'll share. I'm going to try using the Microsoft to-do list again. I'm going to give it a try again. I've been trying.
The Microsoft to-do list?
On your Outlook, the to-do list side of it, I'm going to try using that and see if I like it. I know one of my other colleagues uses something else, but I can't remember what it's called. It helps her.
Thank you, Tisha, for sharing. And let me know how that to-do list works. I might have to do that as well. I still use pencil and paper and transfer it and do all of the things that way. So I'm definitely looking forward to our presenters sharing how they calendar for success. Do we have any other participants who want to share how you set your priorities? All right, well, guys, thank you so much for participating in our opportunity to connect. It is my great pleasure to present to you our 2 speakers for today. I was so thankful when they agreed to come on and share their expertise in calendaring. They came highly recommended as 2 professionals who know how to get their work done because they know how to set their priorities and write it down and then stick to it. That's the most important part, right? Whatever we write down, we make sure that we stick to it. So I want to introduce you to Dr. Rashada Abraham and Mr. DeAndre Edwards, and then I'm going to allow them to tell you a little bit more about themselves.
Hello, everyone. I am Rashada Abraham. I currently serve as a principal apprentice at Garden Oaks. I had the pleasure of previously serving as assistant principal at Garden Oaks, and I had other instructional leadership roles in both Texas and Louisiana. I worked in Royal ISD. So if you're on I-10, think Buc-ee's going toward Austin, and that's how you get to Royal. And I was an assistant principal in a little small town in Louisiana called Claiborne Parish. It was not too far from my home of Shreveport. And I was formerly a classroom teacher of 6th, 7th, and 11th grade students. So I definitely am familiar with the plight to plan and structure your day in a way that is effective and efficient. So I'm glad to be here today. So thank you to the team for inviting me and having to have this opportunity to speak to you guys.
Thank you for being here. Mr. Edwards?
Yes, hello, you guys. My name is DeAndre Edwards. I have the pleasure of serving at Waltrip High School as the principal apprentice. Prior to this school year, I did I did serve at Worthing High School, most recently as the Dean of Instruction. Previous to being a Dean of Instruction at Worthing High School, I was also the instructional specialist and the campus testing coordinator. And I acted as an AP. I had appraisees and all of the other administrative duties as well. Prior to my leadership experience, I did teach AVID, World History, and U.S. History. I'm extremely elated to share with you guys a practice that I really hold dear to my heart, seriously. I'm very proud of how effective it has been in managing my time, and it has been extremely beneficial to my success as an administrator.
Thank you guys both for being here, and we're going to start with Dr. Abraham.
So one of the things that over, I guess at this point, 5 years of being a mid-manager and an instructional leader, that was really an epiphany to me in the beginning was as a classroom teacher, my reign was inside of my classroom. My timing, everything that dealt with scheduling was confined within the walls of my classroom and my classroom only. However, as a leader, there's this curve of shifting from lesson planning and planning for what's directly in front of you to task prioritization, to things that are pretty much outside of you, outside of your immediate reign. And as a leader, you have to be able to use scheduling as a tool for efficacy, because you guys know there's so much that happens in a day that if you don't plan and if you're not proactive in the process, then you are forced to be reactive to all of the things that are coming at you. And so one of the things that I've had to learn, and I want to give a disclaimer that I am a two-time now Together Leader trained leader. If you've not had an opportunity to attend the Together Leader training, I 100% recommend it. But it's interesting that we are doing this particular presentation after the second time that I've done the Together Leader trainer, and it really reinforced the need for me to become a winner versus a whatter. And by that, I mean, there are so many tasks that come at us each day, tasks that we know about in advance and tasks that have deadlines, as well as tasks that come ad hoc that we are absolutely unprepared for. It's just those things that happen. And planning is what allows us to really grab a hold of those what's and to determine when. And so the practice that I've had is to ensure that I have a weekly meeting with myself. And this meeting is the time where I would equate to my lesson planning as a teacher. So on a weekly basis as a teacher, I sat down and I looked at what is it in my lesson sequence that is coming up that I have to attack in this next week. And I really hone in on those things. And I use a power hour. So once I figured out my agenda for the following week, throughout the entire week, every single day, I have what I call a power hour. In reality, it is not 1 hour, but it's cooler to say power hour, I guess. But what I do is for that day, I know what I have to do in the week. I know what I'm thinking needs to be done in this particular day. I use that power hour to prioritize and to complete any quick task that can be done. I need to send an email. Sometimes sending an email is one of those things that it's like, oh, I'll do it when I get time. But it takes 2 minutes to get this task done. Let's go ahead and knock it out during power hour, and that thing is done. And that kind of grounds me, and it really gives me some ammunition to get through the other things that I need to get through throughout the day. And in just a moment, I'm going to show an exemplar of my personal calendar But I also give myself a little bit of flexible time. I think there's this thing that has become a badge of honor to some extent as administrators, that we say we're so busy that we didn't get to eat lunch, or we're so busy that we didn't get to do this or that. And one of the things that I've learned, and one of the things that's fueled my efficacy, is balance. And by balance, I mean giving myself 5 to 10 minutes to take a breather, to process in between meetings or in between classroom walks, and really being okay. But also with the flexible time, which I'll show you in just a moment, I've been able to leave buffers. We are charged with spending a large amount of our time in classrooms. And so I do make sure there's time where I can kind of get around the classrooms, follow up with teachers, and really be in the instructional work and not back to back to back to back with meetings. And so before I get into my schedules just shortly, the last thing that I want to say is, or reinforce, is the piece about balance. I've had to learn it's okay to say no. And if you can't say no, say not right now. Because if you have a calendar that is stacked and it is fully prepared, you're able to really key in on those opportunities that you can say yes. And lastly, I'll say, as tier 2 leaders, our charge is to really support tier 3 leaders. And by tier 3 leaders, I mean our teacher leaders and those who are really on the field, pushing the work with their colleagues into into higher places. So delegation, using tier 2 leaders, especially the ones that are hungry, especially the ones that have the ability to support the work that we're doing, really building leadership density in those leaders is an opportunity here, and you'll see it the more you plan. So now, getting into my personal calendar, you'll notice that everything is pretty much color coded. And Mr. Edwards is going to talk more about color coding in just a moment. But everything has to have a color for me. One thing that it does is it helps me identify where am I spending the bulk of my time. And the other thing is it's a quick symbol for me if I'm on the move. I'm pretty well aware of my color coding system, so it helps me know what's coming up or what I'm doing and just how I'm moving about my day. Um, Spot observations. I heard someone say earlier that they have spot observations on their calendar. There is, for me, is no other way to accomplish all the spot observations that I have to get done throughout the week without putting them on my calendar. You'll notice that it just says AM spot observation here and PM spot observation there. But I want to point out that for me, when I click into it, I put the teacher's initials so that I know and have a personal reference of where I'm going. I do allow my teachers to have access to my calendar so they know when a good time to come and see me would be and when I'll be busy, just as a point of reference. And I don't like for them to always know exactly who I'm going to. So the system within is more so for me, but I am able to kind of plan out more specifically who I'm seeing in spot observations. And I do find that to be efficient in order to make sure I've seen all the teachers that I need to see, and in order to make sure that I have a plan for the day. Again, it's just like a lesson plan. You can't walk in knowing that you're going to teach verbs today, but you have no sample verbs to talk about in your lesson. You have to come with some idea of what you'll be doing. And sometimes I'm able to plan these out by the week, and sometimes it's easier to plan them day by day based off of individual teachers' needs. Sometimes teachers will say, hey, can you pop in and see me? I have a lesson that I'd like you to see this day, and that kind of helps me plan as well. Another thing that I'd like to note is going back to the task prioritization piece, we get so many tasks, so many deadlines and due dates, and I think most of us can say that we spend some amount of time doing this work at home or outside of school hours. And I think we all accept this job knowing that it is not a 8 to 5. We know that. However, I do believe that prioritizing your tasks within your day can kind of keep it to a minimum, the work that you're having to do outside of school hours. And with that being said, you'll notice maybe on Wednesday, I needed to work on some action planning items. So I put that in a specific chunk on my calendar. And that lets me know if you don't get this action plan done within this time, you're going to be working on it at home. You'll also notice again the white areas. For me, this is time that I am in classrooms and I give myself some flexibility here, or it's time where if someone needs to see me and it's unexpected, or if some investigation comes up that needs to be done, I'm able to allocate that time to those tasks. And lastly, you'll notice that the color coding for me here, brown is going to be some of my teacher time, as well as the teal kind of color. I'd like to note that whenever you look at your color coding, think about that 80%. Does this reflect that instruction? And I do believe that if it doesn't reflect that 80%, you should make some shifts, because student performance to some extent will probably show that. The last thing that I'd like to leave you with before we go over to Mr. Edwards is in regards to emails. Emails will pop up all throughout the day, and many times emails will lead to tasks or other things that you have to do. Build in some time, whether it be flexible time or a power hour, to address your email. One of the best things that I can say, or one of the best habits that I think I've developed, is not checking my email throughout the day as much as possible. And the reason that I say that is it's easy to go down a rabbit hole from an email or to get distracted by something there. What you should do is allocate time for those things. And once you've parsed out and you've figured out what the task or the to-do is, you plan for handling that in a later power hour or in a later flexible time. And with that, I think this kind of sums up my calendar. We will answer some questions later if you have any, but I'll hand it over to Mr. Edwards.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Abraham. First and foremost, I do want to start by saying that I'm a firm believer in, if you do not manage and control your time will take control of you. We are all aware of emergencies that come up, or things that others make it seem like it's an emergency, for you to take care of right then and there. And before you know it, you've spent the hour and a half on this task, or working with someone. I am very intentional about scheduling out and planning my weeks ahead of time, and it's an entire process, as you all can see from the screen. So I first start off by I plan ahead. So what are the non-negotiables? So if you look at that first bullet point, it says the school and district important dates. So what do we have going on at the school or the district? Those are the first things that I put on my calendar. So if it's testing, if it's holidays, if it's grade level assemblies, if it's district professional developments or trainings, those are the ones that I put on my calendar first, because I know I can't get out of those things. Those are my non-negotiables. Other non-negotiables are going to be my reoccurring tasks. So we all know we have morning duty or lunch duty or dismissal duty. Those are on my calendar, and they are set to remain on my calendar every single week. So I don't have to go in and put those in. They are automatically populated on my calendar. Also, any meetings that we know that we're part of. If you're a part of a GSM meeting, or if you're a part of campus culture committees, and you know every Tuesday we have these meetings, I go ahead and set those meetings for reoccurring occurrences as well. After I get my non-negotiables out the way, every Sunday, I literally, I'm very old school, but I go to pen and paper, and I script out all of my priorities and duties for that week. I first honestly, I first look at my principal's email that they send out. My principal does a very good job at sending out leadership newsletters and school-wide newsletters every week, every Sunday. Sometimes it's on a Saturday, but I look at those first and I set my priorities based on that first. And then I go ahead and look at my duties that I'm responsible for. So, for an example, if I am over the English department, um, what priorities and tasks do I need to take care of for my department? I script all of those out. And then once I've scripted out all of my priorities, all of my duties, all of my tasks, the things for the week, I prioritize them. So at the beginning of the week, that's when I take care of my big things, my tasks or duties that come with a hard deadline. I take care of those, get those out of the way first. And then I build in the rest of my calendar with all of the smaller tasks and duties that if it's not completed, it's not the end of the world. I can always schedule it for the next day or the next week. Um, After I build that process out, then I move into color coding my calendar. As you guys can see on the right side, everything for the most part have a color associated with it. And this really helps me be mindful of what's coming up next. So for example, if I'm at lunch duty and I have set an instructional walk for after lunch, when I see that red, I know this is a non-negotiable. As we know, we are first instructional leaders. So I really value my instructional time and it is sacred time for me. So unless the school is on fire, I am in the classroom. That is either doing an instructional walk, doing my spot observations, or coaching administrators or teachers. Um, and I'm going to go in more about the color code when I show you guys an example of my calendar. But lastly, I do want to say be intentional about your time. Uh, every day at the end of my day, you will see on my calendar, I have a remind and a reflect. And during this time, remind myself of I look over my calendar and I see, did I complete everything? If I did not complete everything, what did not complete and why, and then I reschedule it to make sure that I take care of it. I may not have been able to get to it today, but I will get to it tomorrow. Also, I use that as a reminder for any trackers that you may have to do. I know here at Waltrip, we are big on aggressive monitoring, so we do have a nice amount of trackers. So at the end of the day, I make sure that I've inputted all of my data and notes into the tracker to make sure that I am in compliance with the school admin team. Next, Miss Dr. Abraham spoke on this, but the emails. I always tell people, if you email me in the middle of the day, be expecting a response at about 4:30. That is when I have my remind and reflect time. I'm able to go in, sit down without distractions. Most kids are off the campus at that time, and I can really dedicate that time to replying to emails or sending follow-up emails to teachers or anyone else that I need to send an email to. Um, so I Oh, I'm sorry. And lastly, prioritize instruction. We are instructional leaders first, and we are charged with being in the classroom 80% of the time. When you look at my calendar, you will be able to tell that I am in the classroom more than 80% of the time. So make sure that you prioritize instruction and then also prioritize yourself. Dr. Abraham spoke on this. We have to give ourselves time to take a seat and eat our lunch. If we are not at 100%, how could we pour our 100% into others? So make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. Make sure that we are taking care of the things that it's going to fuel us so that we are our utmost best for our teachers, students, and administrators. So I do want to show you guys my calendar. All right. So this is an example of my calendar. This is a good week. If I showed you this week, you would probably be like, whoa, this is a good week. But I am intentional about what Dr. Abraham said, giving myself time in between my tasks so that if anything come up unexpected, I have time to address it. I'm not so busy where I cannot address issues that teachers may bring to me. I am also, part of my role is to be a support to the faculty and staff on this campus. So I have to make sure that I do dedicate time to be free for them. If you notice at the beginning of my week in the red, that's all of my instructional time. That goes from instructional walks where I'm just walking the campus, I'm just peeking in classes, I'm checking to make sure those low-hanging fruit are done, such as LO, DOL is posted. The classroom is organized properly. No students are in the red zone. So I do all of those things in my instructional walks. And then I also schedule out all of my walkthroughs. On mine, I do put the teacher name. I put the teacher name. We have a large school, so I also have to put the room number. I put everything that I need to know in on my calendar uh, for my walks. And then also you see my calibration walks. So I take care of the majority of my instructional walks and spot observations between Monday and Thursday. And I do that so that on Friday, I could take care of a nice amount of the meetings that I do have to, participate in. I'm also obligated to be over things such as attendance or tardies or GSMs. So all of those meetings you will see, they are on my Friday. I have my check-in with my principal on that day. I am very intentional about dedicating Monday through Thursday to instruction, and Friday do get the bulk of my meetings. As you can see, I do still do an instructional walk on Friday. I'm not saying do not focus on instruction on Fridays. I'm just saying be intentional about your time. And like I told you guys, at the end of every day, I have that reminder and reflect. And this is also a time for me to sometimes remind myself of my why. Sometimes, just being honest, some days are hard days. And we need that time to just sit back and remind ourselves of our why and our purpose. So I really, really value that time as well. That is a sacred time for me. I do not schedule anything during that time for the most part, unless it was scheduled for me. As of right now, I would normally be in my remind and reflect time, but I really, really wanted to participate in this AP hours. I also use this on the weekends. So I determine our campus instructional focus. All of our administrators input all of the data that they have collected from classrooms when they're doing walks into a tracker, and I analyze that tracker. So on Saturdays and Sundays, I do dedicate about 30-45 minutes to analyzing the instructional focus tracker and determining what our focus will be for the next week. But be intentional about your time, prioritize yourself as well, and get ahead of it. Plan your week before it starts. Dr. Abraham said it. This is our lesson plan. Anybody that knows me know I live and die by my calendar almost. And I tell people, hey, send me a calendar invite. If it's not on the calendar, I cannot guarantee that I am going to be there. So really prioritize your time and be strategic and intentional about it.
Thank you both so much for sharing your process with creating your calendar and how you set your priorities, how you prioritize yourself, how you built in time for reflection as well, and always remembering that instruction is what you're there for. It's what we're all there for. And so making sure that that's reflected in our calendars. If we don't write it down, if we don't lock it in, if we don't have that, it probably won't happen. So thank you guys so much for that. I want to open the floor for questions. Questions about something you saw on a calendar, or about something that you heard? And I'll start us off if you guys haven't thought about it. I wrote down a question. So what do you do when someone comes to talk to you, midday, but you're between leaving one thing on your calendar and going to another one? What do you do when that person comes up and wants to ask you something?
I know for me, I really try my best to be to give a listening ear to everyone. So I will tell them, hey, walk with me. I am headed to this meeting that I cannot be late for, but walk with me and I'm listening. Go ahead and tell me what's going on. And I do give them that opportunity to share with me whatever they may be going through or whatever issue may have arose. Um, but I do circle back to letting them know, hey, I'm really busy right now. I'm getting to a meeting, but I do want to set up some time for us to discuss this. I will pull out myself. I have my calendar on my cell phone as well. I will pull out my cell phone. I will ask them, hey, are you available at this time or what time will work best for you? And I do try to get them in on my calendar. If I am not able to, or if this is something that needs to be addressed right now, I do leverage my other leaders on campus to see if it's something that they could assist with, or I will point the person in the right direction to get the support that they need.
Thank you. Dr. Abraham,
Yeah.
do you have anything you want to add to that?
I would say my method is probably very similar to that. I am known for the walk and talk meeting. So, hey, let's walk and talk. And the ending point is my next stop because we got things to do. And so, I really try to build the relationship with people so they truly believe me when I say, I really want to give you all of my attention and I want your problem to have the focus that it deserves. And I just can't focus on it as I'm headed here or as I'm headed there. And I'll say, shoot me an email or let's set a meeting. If I'm not able to set the meeting right then and there, I always say shoot me an email. And this is just a note on the side. Anytime someone is walking and talking with me, that's how I end that conversation because I know that I am walking and talking. So my mind is on where I'm going. And although I'm trying to kind of give my ear, at the end of the day, I know I'm going to forget it. And you're going to tell me, remember you said, and I'm going to say, no, I don't. So I put it back on them to email me whatever we just talked about. So I have it there. But I really do try not to give too much of an ear at a time where I'm focused on something else because people do deserve my full attention in order for me to solve whatever the problem is or to be that thought partner. But if it's super, super urgent, a walk and talk it is. Otherwise, shoot me an email. And
Thank
I
you
always
for
follow
that.
up.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Anyone have a question for Dr. Abraham or Mr. Edwards about calendaring, about their process?
Hi, this is Mr. Rodriguez. I do have a question. I know either both of you or one of you was a CTC and also a leader at the same time. So my question is, how were you guys able to manage, being CTC and an AP or instructional leader? I know I find it really difficult to manage my schedule, around this month. And, we have many tests. We just finished MAP. We have Dibbles as well, Circle, and then we're having the STAR standalone and then Topaz. So how can I manage my own schedule, based on what I saw from the presentation?
Honestly, and I was a CTC as well. Honestly, for me, this is the year that I became a CTC was the year that I realized the importance of managing my time. But I also did have to prioritize testing because we know that we are bound by state laws to ensure that we are facilitating these tests. And then we know also there are certain goals such as participation that we must reach. So I did prioritize my testing. One thing that I did do was communicate with the leaders on campus of blackout weeks for me. So I was a CTC when we had paper tests. So it really required a lot of work in the background before the testing date even began. So I really used to have days where I would have my calendar blacked out. And I would tell leaders, I would tell my principal, hey, I am boggled down with preparing for this test and making sure that we set everything up properly and that we are set up for success. So unless it's an emergency, could you please get someone else to support or assist me with this? I would say be vocal about when you are not available. Um, so I would recommend, such as for STAR coming up, it would be a blackout week for me. But I also used to front load a lot of the things that I knew I had to take care of that week. So the week prior to that blackout week used to be a very busy week for me because I was trying to take care of a lot of tasks or duties or responsibilities that I had prior to my blackout week, so that I'm not letting other duties that I might have fall by the wayside. But it really, really, really requires a lot of time management and being strategic with your time. Uh, yeah, and that's what worked best for me, those blackout weeks. But also front loading a lot of my duties and responsibilities, or pushing them off to the week back afterwards, if I could.
And I think, I guess, to add to that, the being verbal part is very important, and not being verbal as in a squeaky wheel or a not being a team player. But I do think we are feeling very overloaded right now with various tasks that are coming on our plate, and that includes your principal. And your principal may get the impression that you have it, and if you are making it work, and making it work means you are stretching yourself thin, 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 and they're not realizing it. The way that I like to present um, being overwhelmed or feeling like I can't manage my schedule is by presenting a schedule. So, hey,
Mhm.
principal, here are my priorities. One, the question that I would have for them is, where does this fit on your priorities for me? Like, how do you rank this? Help me figure this out. And the next question that I would ask them is, what would you want me to give up, or how can I make sure I'm reaching the things that you want me to reach, or addressing the things that you want me to address? Because there may be some things that you're working on that the principal may not be too concerned about, or that may not be present, or something that your principal can help offload. But I definitely highly recommend against just making it happen. If you feel like there are deadlines that you want to meet, if you feel like you're compromising your personal balance, at least bring light to the situation and saying, hey, I'm really having some struggles with prioritization. And if you planned it out well enough and you can show how you're not able to do it within a reasonable schedule within a week, I feel like your principal, or I would hope your principal, would work with you to provide some support, or to provide some clarity around the true priorities.
And I do want to add on to what Dr. Abraham said. Um, in addition to the being vocal, also be vulnerable. Let other leaders on the campus know, or ask them, hey, could you help me with this? I'm really tied up with trying to get these test tickets printed out, or whatever the case may be. Be vocal and let people know that you need help as well. Because when the time comes around when you are not boggled with testing and you see a colleague who need that support, they will possibly be looking at you to support them. So understand that it's a two-way street, but be vocal, but also be vulnerable and transparent with your team.
Thank you, guys. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Great question. We have any more questions for our wonderful presenters? Well, I want to thank Dr. Abraham and Mr. Edwards for taking the time to put together this presentation, for doing a great job of presenting the process that they go through to create their calendars, because calendaring is a very critical piece to the work that we do. Our ability to schedule our time definitely impacts whether or not we get all of the things done that we're tasked to do. So thank you guys so much for that.
Thank you
So
for
as
having us.
Yes, thank you for this
absolutely.
opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that I want to ask our participants to do is, as you maybe go back in and tweak your calendars, you will have access to the PowerPoint. Like I said, it's been uploaded into our Teams channel. And so you'll see both of the examples of calendars. And I want to invite you all to then share your calendar so that we can see different ways people are calendaring, so that we can share ideas. One of the things that I heard our presenters talk about is how we support each other. Like none of us have to do the work alone. That's why we're learning how to be teams and how to share out what we need. So definitely, please share your artifacts of your calendars. There's a link here, and I know that you can't press it, but again, the PowerPoint will be in the Teams channel, and I'll share that with the participants who were here today. Another thing that we want to invite you guys to do, in an effort to, we live in a video world, and a lot of times, a lot of information we get are 1 to 5 minute videos. We would love to get your impression of what you learned today. So you might create a video of yourself, just, using your phone, of what you learned today, of how this session was impactful for you. You might talk about how you took something that you learned and put it into your calendar, and then you experienced success as a result of doing so. And I want to share with you some guidelines for making your videos so that we can definitely share them. Like we talked about earlier, the North is leading the way, but I'm sure that other divisions would love to benefit from all of the wisdom and knowledge that we have up here in the North. So make sure that your face is in the frame. Make sure that you have a quiet area, your camera is still, and speak in a loud, confident voice like our speakers today. And I know I told you that we would have a 45-minute session with 15 minutes at the end, and we went over a little bit, but that's okay. You're welcome to stay and ask more questions, to work on your calendar. But if not, you can definitely work on it on your own time. There is a feedback survey. I'd love to get your feedback on how the session was, on any questions that you continue to have, any suggestions for improvement. And I just want to thank you guys again for being here. Any other questions, any comments that anyone wants to share before we say goodbye? And of course, I will be here until 5:30. Any questions, comments,
I'll
celebrations?
stop recording just in case.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, say thank you so much for Dr. El-Amin for leading this. And